All right, class. Well, if you were watching the last video, then you now understand how to represent decisions that our application is going to make within a flowchart. And this is totally useful because as you write your code, it is important for you to understand what the heck it is you have to write. If you don't understand the problem and you can't think through and solve it in your head, then how are you going to know what to type into the screen? Typing code is hard enough. So at least make sure you understand what it is that you have to do. Then we can go figure out together how to do it. Now, I am about to show you how to make a decision in a real world application using C Sharp. We don't write C Sharp in this course. We write pseudocode within Zybooks. So don't get too hung up on what you see on the screen. I'll try to articulate it and try to explain to you what's happening, but that's not my intent of this video. The intent of this video is not for you to learn C Sharp. The intent of this video is for you to see how these concepts apply to the real world. All right, well, the first thing I want you to see is how in C Sharp we declare variables exactly like you do in Zybooks. Now, in Zybooks, you have to write out the word integer followed by the name. In C Sharp, it's nice because all I have to do is write int. Now, in Zybooks, because you're writing pseudocode, you would write put to output. Actually, you would say put, and then in quotes, you would say what is the length of the room to output. That's the pseudocode how you would write it in Zybooks. However, in C Sharp, we're actually going to write console.writeLine, and then in parentheses, we're going to pass in that string. And this is the instructions. Because remember, in Zybooks, you'll just say length equals get next input, width equals get next input. But if this was a real application, you have to tell the user what it is they have to input. So that's all I'm doing when I say console.writeLine, when I say what is the length of the room. Then length equals convert dot to int32 console.readline. This is a fancy way in C Sharp to say, hey, what they typed into the screen, convert it into an integer and store it into my variable that I declared is an integer. Let's go ahead and run this application so you can see what it's doing. What we expect it to do is to ask us for the length and then take the length that we type in and store it in that variable. Ask the user for the width and then take what they typed in for the width and store it in the width variable. Then we're going to do our process where we say area equals length times width. That is actually almost exactly how you do it in Zybooks, except for Zybooks doesn't require you to put a semicolon in the end. C Sharp does. Then we're going to do our output statement. Now, this is where currently, as I showed you this application in a previous video, all it does now is says the application of this, or says the area of this room is so many square foot. It's variable based. So every time we run this application, it's going to output a different number. So let's go ahead and fire this up so you can remember how it works now. What is the length of the room? So I'm going to type in 100. Then it's going to say what is the width of the room. I'm going to type in 200 and I click enter. It says the area of the room is 20,000 square feet. Now, I want to make this application smart. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write in C Sharp what we call an if statement. Now, this is literally what we're talking about in the week 3 discussions where we talk about branching. We talk about conditions. Some of you have already made posts about what Boolean expressions are. So all of those apply right here. This is why our conversation this week is so important, because this is how we make our code smart. So I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to, in parentheses, I'm going to put that expression or that condition that we're going to evaluate. So I'm going to say if area is greater than 100, do this, and then I'm going to write else. Scroll this up here. Else, do that. No typo here, right? So after we do our process where we say area equals length times width, we will know what this area is. So I'm going to run it in a second, and I'm going to drop a breakpoint in here so we can see what it's going to actually do. But what we're saying is, if this is true, because remember, all of our expressions and all of our decisions, when we write that that Boolean expression, when we write that out, the computer is going to evaluate what we wrote. And all we're saying is if it is true, it'll go into your first block. So if it's true, let's copy this line of code here. So if it's true that our area is greater than 100, I want to output, let's see, we're going to say, wow, that is a big room. And then it'll say the area of the room is, and we'll finish like we normally did. Then over here, if it's not, your else statement is always what happens if it was false. So if you take a look at our flow chart over here, here we say if area is greater than 100. If that's true, then I'm going to output this little custom message over here. If it's false, I'm going to do something different. So let's keep going here. This is where it'll be false. So if it's false, I want to, and I'm going to cut this, I want it to do the same thing that we were doing in previous weeks. So let's go ahead and test this real quick. So my first test case, I'm going to input an area that's less than 100, and I'm going to hopefully get it to come down to this line. So when I run this, here it says what is the length of the room, and I'm just going to say the length of the room is 5. What is the width of the room? I'm going to say it's 10. It says the area of the room is 50 square feet. Now I am going to run this application again, and this time I'm going to say the area of the room is 12, or I'm sorry, the length of the room is 12. Then when it says what is the width of the room, I'm going to say 10. Now you notice I have a different output statement. Now it says, wow, that is a big room. The area of the room is 120 square feet. Now, let me actually drop a breakpoint here on line 26. And what a breakpoint means is that I want the application to stop when it gets to line 26. Because I, as a developer, I want to step through this line of code and I want to be able to see exactly what it's doing. Remember in week 1 when we discussed sequence? This is why that's so important, because we have to understand which lines are going to happen next. So I'm going to run this application, and it says what is the length of the room? I am going to say it is 5. What is the width of the room? I am going to say it is 10. And I click enter. Now Visual Studio is kind enough to stop when it got to my breakpoint. If I mouse over here, or if you look down over here, you can see area has a value of 50. The length that was typed in has a value of 5. Width has a value of 10. So 10 times 5, that's why area equals 50. Now on line 26, area is 50. It's going to ask itself, it's going to say, hey, is area greater than 50? And then if it's true, I expect it to go to line 28. If it's false, I expect it to go to line 32. So since we know 50 is not greater than 100, I expect it to jump to line 32. So I'm going to hit F11. And sure enough, the highlighted line is what code gets written next. So you see how it totally jumped over line 28? Didn't even execute that line of code because it knew that this wasn't true, so it's not even going to do it. It literally took our false path. So because area was not greater than 100, it went this way into our else statement, also known as our false condition here. So if I were to continue this application, I get exactly what I expected it to do on that line. The area of the room is 50. Now I'm going to run it one more time. I'm going to say the area of the room is 12. The length of the room is 12. The width of the room is 10. Now, whenever it gets to this line of code over here, I'm going to be able to hit F11 again. And this time, since 120 is greater than 100, I'm expecting it to go into this first block of code over here, line 28. And then I'm expecting it to skip over line 32 and not even do that at all, because this is going down our true path. So I'm going to hit F11, F11. Sure enough, it goes exactly to line 28. Then it skips over 32 and doesn't even go to line 32 at all. And now it outputs that message. Wow, that is a big room. The area of the room is 120 square foot. So you have literally just witnessed real code that you could write in a real job someday. Um, think about it. Imagine all these applications where we have where you apply for insurance, and then if your age is greater than 25, you get a discount. If your age is less than 25, you pay more. Um, so that is a real live use case and why what we're learning in week 3 is so important. As always, if you have any questions on what I showed you today, even if you want to learn some C# and you have some questions about that, I'm here to help. You can ask me anything. Take care.